Hello. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. I got here early, so this is being recorded so that folks can watch it later. The first like 8 minutes are just me like sitting here reading email. I'll have to tell Ginny, like, you might want to crop that out of there. People don't want to
Yeah, she
spend
can crop out all of this. Yeah.
people don't want to spend 8 minutes watching me, drink my tea and check my email.
Well, they might. It can be very calming.
Maybe. There's a few minutes where I like walk away, so it's just a shot of the wall behind me.
Uh-huh.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Trying to get some stuff done today. I got some of it done.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
How have you been?
I find if I make a to-do list, I get a lot more done.
Yeah. If I start making to-do lists, I'm behind and stressed.
Yep. Sometimes I put things on the to-do list that I've already done just so I can cross them off.
I like it. Yes, yes.
Because I want to give myself credit for all the things I actually did.
Right. That makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I'm doing pretty good. I've been making a lot of masks and gowns.
Okay.
So that's been my past day or so. Hi, Kathleen.
She's there, but she's not.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Hi, Joyce.
Hello.
Hi, Don.
Good afternoon, everybody.
How are ya?
Fine. How are you?
Good.
Kathy, I've seen you on lots of these Zoom calls.
Yeah. I get around. Clearly you do too.
Yeah.
This morning they had to look at my cats fighting in the background. That was really special.
Hi, Hannah. How was everyone's Easter?
Quiet.
Fine. Just different.
Yeah.
Andrew, did Emmaus get enough toilet paper delivered?
You know, I know that they are still putting out there that we'll take it. Right now, the push is face masks and gowns.
Right.
So I spent my Easter sewing
Mm-hmm.
between Saturday and Sunday. My mom and I sewed about 10 or 12 hours each day. We made
Wow.
14 gowns and 50 masks. So we've made about that many more since then. So
Wow.
hello, Damien.
There's
Hey,
Damien.
I like that background. I have a Sesame
All right.
Street one I've been using when my family plays Zoom games together.
Oh,
You need to bring that to the clergy chat sometime.
Yeah. You're muted, Damien.
I forgot.
There you
I've been
go.
on so many Zoom calls today, I keep forgetting. It's good to see you all.
Good to see you.
How's everybody doing in this unusual time?
Good. How are you?
Fine, managing just fine, moving along in the process of doing church online these days.
mm-hmm.
Yep. My job includes, I was just saying my job includes a lot more sewing than it used to.
Okay. Are you going in at all, or are you working from home, Andrea?
The only place I'm going is like so each of us who are mostly office folks have been assigned houses we're partnered with. So like if they need supplies, rather than the staff or clients going to get those, we are taking them supplies.
Gotcha.
Hello.
Hello.
So that's
Hi,
the
Kathy.
only place I'm really going is delivering supplies.
Great.
Bill, do you want to join this or not? So far, I didn't think of changing your name and making it both of our names, but
Yeah.
We're going to give folks just a couple more minutes. I am aware that it's 6 o'clock and we want to be respectful of everyone's time, but we also want to give folks a chance if they're having technical difficulties to reach out and get assistance. So we'll give folks just a few more minutes.
so,
You think you can change it?
I don't know.
We're all so quiet out here in Zoom land today. I know it's a little later there, but not much later than it is here.
No, it's only 6 o'clock.
Right.
It's 4 o'clock there. Are you 2
Yeah,
hours
yep.
different?
Yep, 2 hours difference. It's 4 o'clock and the current temperature is 76.
Oh, hush.
Oh gosh.
Oh.
You know, I had to bring that up, right?
Are
Thanks,
you sure you
Damien.
want to give that up? Just say it.
Just want you all to know what you're missing. That's all.
Mhm.
I think next week we're supposed to be back in the 70s here.
That'd be good.
Sure. I'll believe it when it happens.
All right, well, I think I will go ahead and open us in prayer and we will proceed from there and folks will continue to join and that's fine. And we will just all be together. So I would ask if you are not speaking or preparing to speak that you mute your microphone just so we don't have a bunch of background noise. I know my dog got kicked out of the room and he's really sad about it. So he might make some noise in a bit, but let us open this evening with prayer. Let us pray. Holy God, we gather this day as your church in many places, in many expressions. and in many ways, but with one heart, with one call to be your body in this world. And so we ask that you bless this time that we are together. Open our minds and our hearts. Bring us your wisdom, your courage, and your love, that we might get to know one another a little better and share your love and your grace in big and small ways. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, well, we have asked Damien to join us in these town hall gatherings. And so I just want to introduce him, and then he will share an introductory statement, and then our search committee will share a few comments, and then we'll have some time for questions. Does that sound okay with everyone? Thumbs up. All right, well, I will hand it off to Damien then.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. Well, this is, I have to say that this is the, very interesting way to meet with some of you using video technology. As I know that we are all experiencing life in a different way right now, but it's been an interesting time. I think for me especially, as I've been in this process and going through things, and I'm thinking, how's this all going to work out in the end? But I know that there's a greater plan here. So. Jenny had asked me to kind of share a bit more or a bit of my personal call story and share a little bit of that with you today. And then and do that in a period of time here with you. So glad to be able to do that with you. So I want to share a little bit about my background. I was born and raised in a small rural farming community in the Midwest in Michigan, just outside of the city of Grand Rapids, and was very, raised by my parents. My mother was, kind of stayed at home with us kids. My dad worked out of the home. My dad was the local funeral director there in that community, and so kind of grew up with being around people that were grieving and people dealing with death, and also got to know a lot of the people in the community really well, the local business owners and things like that. So it had a huge impact on who I am as a person, and that's why I share it as part of my call story. Working around the death and dying and the grieving is certainly played a huge part in my ministry and my understanding of the importance of the work that I do as a minister. My parents were also very religious in the sense that they took us to the UCC church in the city of Grand Rapids, where my father was about the fourth generation of ministers in that, or a fourth generation of people to attend that church. And so I became fifth generation to be raised in that church, and spent many years watching my father as the head usher. My mother was involved as one of the nursery folks, so she loved to care for the babies, which is probably part of why I love children so much and working with kids. It's one of my favorite things to do. Anyways, we, kind of grew up in that church atmosphere. My mother sang in the choir. My dad served on different committees and search committees as well. And so I got really steeped in kind of UCC and church life growing up as a kid. And then, as I got older and went into college, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and spent a few years kind of exploring different avenues, and eventually decided to go towards interior design. And so over a period of a few years studying and learning more about my artistic craft, I eventually felt the call to ministry. And so I went to, decided to go and visit seminaries, and I ended up visiting Bangor Theological Seminary out in Bangor, Maine. And I don't know if you've ever been to Maine, but if you have, you know what a beautiful state that is and what a wonderful place that it is to be. And I really was thrilled to be there and to attend seminary there. Unfortunately, when I got there and started on that degree, I quickly discovered that not all of the seminary students believed the same way I did, and that is that we should love all people. And so it became apparent that there was some biases there and prejudices there. And so I started to immediately sense that maybe I wasn't in the right place after all, and that maybe ministry wasn't what God was calling me to do. And so I did what any logical person would do, and I ran in the other direction about as far as I could go. So I avoided the call. When I avoided it, it meant that I went back to Michigan and tried to restart my life. And I had kind of gotten comfortable with sales and was involved in selling cars. You can see by my awesome background, right? That's one of my cars, a 1966 Mustang. So you find out very quickly that my love and passion around cars is really, really huge. But anyways, I decided to go back into working with cars and automobiles and was doing that for a period of time before ultimately going back to working in kitchen and bath design, which was part of my interior design background. So I spent a significant amount of time of about 10 years on or off working in the kitchen and bath design industry. So helping people determine what colors, platform they should use in their kitchen, what materials, granites, stonework, doing big entertainment centers in homes along the Lake Michigan shoreline. So I really love working with cabinetry. It's another one of my passions besides classic cars and ministry. But I eventually figured out that I needed to respond to that call to ministry that was kind of starting to well up again. And it happened to be that I had a local church pastor where we lived. And she had kind of gently nudged me back into ministry. I don't think she realized what she was really doing, that she was really nudging me, but she was nudging me. And I found myself asking the question of, maybe I should go back to seminary. And so that's indeed what I did. What it took for the big giant nudge was that I lost my job. The economy took a big dive. And at that point, that was when I kind of came to the realization that I needed to, reevaluate some things for me personally. And so my wife and I and our 4 children together, we have 4 children, we said, okay, this is a new part to the journey. We got to figure this thing out. So pack up our bags and headed back south, south in Michigan, that is, and back getting closer to Grand Rapids where I grew up. And so I went to Chicago Theological Seminary and met wonderful people there, professors and other students, and finished that master's degree in about a 2.5-year time. 2 years into, or a year into my seminary degree there, I got called to serve a small church in kind of a resort town called New Buffalo. And so I served that church while I was finishing up my seminary degree. And I did that for 2 years as a part-time job. And then from there, I ended up with an opportunity to add a second church to my calling. And so I served 2 churches at the same time, and they were about 30 miles apart. So I did the regular back and forth every Sunday and a couple times during the week to get to the other church and to serve them at the same time. And after about a total of 4 years between those two churches, I decided that I was kind of getting tired of serving two churches at the same time, and that I thought it would be really great if I just had to be in one place at one time, and that I could serve one community of faith. And so that's what led me to Cleveland, Ohio. When I got to Cleveland near our national headquarters, I was really pleased to be there, and made connection with lots of new people and new community members, and started working for a church there, and served as the senior pastor for just about 3 years. And then that led me from there. I made a decision that I wanted to try something else, a different opportunity, and that led me to interim ministry work. And so I've spent the last approximately, 2.5 years doing interim work. First, just served a church in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, which is just outside of New York City. And so served there for a period of time. And then I've been here in Santa Cruz, California for the last year. So, I've been through kind of the ups and downs, if you will, of some of the ministry opportunities. And I think for me, it feels like a natural progression for me to work into conference ministry. I've actually had that as part of my my desire for a long time, was to work in conference ministry. I've really had the benefit of meeting many conference staff and people over the years in my own ministry, and seeing what wonderful resources we have in different conference settings all over the country. And I said, I'd love to be a part of that someday, and be the one that somebody calls upon when they're struggling with their call, or when a church is struggling to find a new pastor. I would love to be able to help those churches, and to kind of walk side by side on their faith journey with them. So it's kind of a short version of my call story.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now I'm going to turn to Hannah to say a bit from the search committee. And I know Pastor Cindy Bum was on it also. Are there others in this call who are on the search committee?
I see Stephanie's here as well, Stephanie DeLong.
Okay.
So,
Awesome. Wonderful.
So I will just share, and then I'll let the others share as well. And I knew as soon as I started talking, there'd be a dog that needed to get in my lap. So there were 9 of us on the search committee, and we were from all over our conference, lay people like myself and pastors, and we received 13 profiles from all over the denomination, all really interesting people, really talented pastors. And for me, it made me feel really grateful for our denomination, and for the people that are called into ministry. So it made it a little bit difficult for us, because they were all just really great folks to talk to and to think about and pray for. So from those 13, we focused we prioritized people who were ordained in full standing in the UCC for 5 years or more. We prioritized committee on ministry experience and search and call experience. And we narrowed down those 13 profiles to 6 people that we had Zoom interviews with. We split it into 2 nights and did 3 on each night, each about an hour long. And after that, our committee really focused in on 2 candidates. And I was really pleased and interested to see that we really came into agreement together. And a lot of that was prayer and spirit led. And so we invited Damien and our other candidate to Jeff City to have in-person interviews with the whole committee, which was a wonderful time to be together around a meal and conversation. And we ultimately decided and agreed all together on Damien for this position. We were really struck by his clear passion for the church, his readiness and call to conference ministry, obvious committee on ministry and search and call experience and interest in being a part of that. And also, we felt like he would be a good teammate for Ginny, which was really important to us as well. And all along the way, we had the guidance and the support from Lee Albertson, who works for the United Church of Christ. He is the conference minister search coordinator, I think. Delightful human being, really wonderful and really helpful in supporting our work on this journey. So we've been really excited to introduce Damien to you. I'll let the others from our search committee add their thoughts as well.
Cindy, I see you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Well, I was just thinking if I had any thoughts. I mean, one of the really beauties of this search committee was how well we worked together. And Hannah was a very strong leader for us. And really, we were pretty much of one mind, I think, as, I mean, you know, we looked at every candidate very carefully, talked about pros and cons, but when it came down to really deciding on the person that we thought was the best fit for us, we were together on that, and that was Damien. We felt that Damien really has a very strong pastor's heart. I'll say that as another pastor. And Damien, I remember one of the things you said in our in-person interview with you was, and you said it with a tear, and it caused me to have a tear. You said something about, it's the best job in the world. It's the worst job in the world. There are days it's the best job in the world. There are days it's the worst job in the world. And that's absolutely right. That's the pastorate, and that's life in the church. And there was a real poignancy and truthfulness to that, and to you in your interview, and just being with us in a pastoral way. So we just felt that this was the person, and as Hannah said, somebody that would work well with Jenny as well. And Jenny was strongly, I guess she's not on this call, but strongly supportive of Damien as a candidate and as somebody that she could work with.
And I will say that Ginny was really good about letting our committee do our work and consider and raise our thoughts together before she would speak. And I was also encouraged by the fact that when we were really gathering around Damien as our choice, that she was also feeling the same way. So it felt, we felt really good about that decision.
And I guess it's my turn to speak. How are you all doing? This is Stephanie DeLong. I was also on the committee. And I second what Hannah and Cindy had to say. It was just, felt like the Spirit was leading us through the whole process, and that we worked well together and had some really long Zoom meetings. But Damien, the Spirit just led us to Damien, his pastoral presence. And just like Cindy said, there's a few things he said that just made me feel like, oh my gosh, you're just really gonna fit in here and people are just gonna love you. And he was the right person for this position at this time in this place. And I would just like to affirm everything everyone else said. And I like the fact that you like to work on old cars. You'd fit in great here in Central Missouri, where I live. Got lots of people who like to do that. You're welcome to visit Owensville. And my son just added that doesn't mean they run.
Thank you very much. I will just name real quick, because I should have said this up front and I totally forgot. Ginny cannot be with us this evening because she's in another conference call. She's hosting a call with some of the chaplains of the Missouri Mid-South Conference. on Tuesday evenings, hospital, nursing home chaplains. And so she's got that same issue that I'm sure a lot of us have, where she can only be in one place at a time. And so she will be on the other 2 calls that we'll be having in the next few days. So thank you so much to the search committee for your vital and diligent and faith-filled and spirit-led work. It really is so important for this conference, and it is very much appreciated. So thank you to the committee and for sharing your thoughts this evening. So I think, unless anyone else has anything else they'd like to add, I'm going to open it up for questions. You can either unmute yourself and ask your question. You can type it in the chat and I will read it, or there's I don't know if anybody knows how to raise their hand on Zoom, but there's a little button that lets you raise your hand. And so if you do that, I'll make sure to call on you. Actually, I'm not the host of this meeting, so just speak because I can't see if you have your hand raised. Lisa and Jim, I can see. Nope, okay, you're good. Kathy?
Hi, Damien. So as you said, Bangor Theological Seminary and CTS were very different. And moving down here is, of course, Eden territory. And it took me all of about 10 seconds of talking with colleagues to realize that the education that they focus on in Eden and what they focus on in CTS are entirely different. Not that's bad, they're just entirely different. So my question for you is, what did you value most about your CTS education?
Great question. Thanks, Kathy, for asking that. You know, I think there's a number of things that I valued in, you know, my education. I certainly value the fact that I think with Chicago and specifically their approach to, you know, kind of studies and so forth was much more about inclusiveness, I think, and I appreciated that perspective. And social justice is obviously a huge part of who CTS is, which was very important to me as a person of faith. I wanted to find a place, as I said, that when I attended Bangor, I didn't feel like there was as much of an inclusive feeling there and a social justice piece of it. And as a person, you know, I wanted to be able to make a difference in some way, and I needed an educational background to help me to do that, I guess I would say. So, you know, Joanne Terrell certainly had a huge influence. Dr. Lee Butler was a huge impact on my life and still does. You know, lots of really great professors that allowed me to kind of explore my own faith and yet at the same time encouraged me to grow in my faith in a positive way. I actually am looking really forward to working with Eden too, and to get to know that institution. I've heard many great things about Eden. And actually, you know, and being out here in California, I have been able to work with PSR, which is another great institution that we have, another great seminary, and, you know, worked with the president a little bit out here briefly. So, you know, we have such great seminaries and they all bring such great, you know, value to our institution as a whole, as a church. I think it's an exciting thing. And the other thing I want to just quickly add is that there was a portion of time I spent a year doing a program called STEM, which is Systematic Training for Effective Ministry, which is taking lay leaders and bringing them into ministry as a different approach. And I did that in between going to from Bangor to CTS. So that's a piece that I know there's many conferences that have that option. So I think that's an option that we are looking at more and more now as an affordable way too. So I think those are valid and important experiences.
Thank you. Other questions?
It's a quiet group, don't be shy.
Yeah.
Damien, why don't you tell us, this is Cindy, who was on the search committee, but What attracted you to us?
Yeah, that's another good question. So I had been interested, as I said, to get into conference ministry work. And there were a couple of openings that came up around the same time, and was looking at those. And I also kind of wanted to get back to closer to the Midwest for me. Being a Midwest guy, enjoy being there and near family. My family is all up in the Chicago and Michigan area. And so that was important to me to try to get closer. So that was one of the things that drew me, along with just the fact that it was a good position. And I wanted to also work with somebody who came highly recommended, and Ginny is highly recommended by other conference ministers in the country as a really great conference minister, somebody who's wise and valuable to the UCC as a whole. So I wanted to be able to work with somebody who can teach me, some great things to how to be an ACM.
Hi, Damien. I'm Meredith Jackson. I serve at a ministry in St. Louis, serving those living in hunger and poverty. And I'm just curious about, you kind of have a unique perspective now after talking with the search committee, I'm sure, about who we are as a conference. And I'm curious to know what you think we need to be prepared for as a conference with the shifting kind of changes in conference demographics, what we really need to be prepared for in the next, let's do like shorter term, like 3 years. Like, what do you see that we need to get ready for?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I think there's probably some things that I will, obviously, that I'll learn when I get there, and I'll begin to grasp a better understanding of everything that's kind of happening in the Missouri Mid-South Conference. I think in general, some things that lots of churches, no matter where we are in the country, right now, we are being challenged, and we are at a point where we are being invited into different spaces to do ministry, spaces that maybe we hadn't entered before. Using Zoom for things such as this is one example, but Zoom worship services, Facebook Live worship services, YouTube streamings, all of these different, usages of technology have really pushed us, I think, in many ways. And I think as churches, we're getting an opportunity with this current virus and situation. And that is that we can use our online worship services to reach out to people that we haven't reached out to before, people that don't know that we exist in our communities, that can discover us on Facebook or on a YouTube channel. It's a great way for us to do that. I also have been recently reading a book called Part-Time Church. And it's a great book that I just started reading, and it talks about the realities of what it means to be part-time churches, doing part-time ministry, and how that can be vital ministry, as well as small church ministry can also be vital. So I think there's opportunities that will continue to present themselves to us as pastors and as churches to kind of think about ministry differently. I am a outside of the pew kind of thinker. I like to use that term, that I think we have great creativity in our churches. We have great creativity in our pastors. And, if we can work together and be unified in sharing those gifts, I think that's the beauty of having so many different voices and so many different ideas. As we bring those together, we can really make a huge difference, and we can change. We can make good, solid changes that will affect ministry for a long period of time. I think John Dorhauer has talked about that in one of his more recent books, and talking about the idea that church can look different. I love, Meredith, that you brought up this idea of, working in inner city and working with homeless population. I do a bit of that here in Santa Cruz, and also have done that in other settings. that's another area where we can do a lot of really great ministry in our churches. I know here we have a Sunday night shelter as an example, and we are just in the process of creating a 24-hour 7-day-a-week shelter for all of our, for a group of our homeless brothers and sisters. So I think there's great ways to get creative about ministry and be, really vital in our communities and make the church vital and provide a great future.
So since you gave me a wonderful lead-in, can I get a follow-up?
You absolutely can.
I'm curious about how you can see conference leaders supporting local church pastors and also local church leaders who are really engaging in the justice work. I've tried to engage as much as I can here in St. Louis, and I'm wondering how you can see the conference getting involved on that level and supporting the work that's already happening.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, as Kathy mentioned earlier, going to CTS, I think that my sense of social justice is really a big part of my ministry wherever I go, whether that's marching for Black Lives Matter or, doing something for women's rights, and dealing with, speaking out against the immigration issues that are happening. All of these things are ways that I think as a conference minister, I think you also have to get engaged on those levels. And I think you have to be willing to march side by side with the pastors and with the churches whenever you can find time to carve out and to make that happen. So I very much look to, some of our national leaders that have done that in our national setting, who have gone to different places and marched and done speeches and preached and led in those powerful ways. And I would hope that I have that opportunity to walk beside you and to support you and other pastors and other churches throughout the conference as we continue to do the work that God's called us to do on the, in regards to social justice, for sure.
A couple questions. So you've mentioned the social justice and Black Lives Matter and immigrant rights, which I love all of that. And we've also talked about how doing ministry differently with the internet and how we can change. And I love all of that. The reality is there are a lot of churches here who are not there. I put out a Zoom video once a week, a video so they can watch it on YouTube or Facebook, and that's about all I'm going to get from my folks. I tried to do a Zoom council meeting, some of my folks just weren't going to show up. Black Lives Matter is a four-letter word around here in this part of Missouri. So how do you support such varying perspectives in a conference that ranges everything from wanting to be ONA to churches who say, if you even discuss that in this conference, we are gone? How do you support some of these, especially pastors and who are maybe a little more progressive in some of these churches that are not, without alienating then all of these churches as well, if that makes any sense?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's always a line to walk, as whether you're a pastor or whether you're a church. I mean, when we think about local church, that has to make a decision on an issue, whether they want to take a stance on an issue, that's always, and it could be that the church as a body agrees that this is the stance we should take, but then they're worried that they can be the outcast in the community. And honestly, I mean, what we know about, the conference that you all are in is that, that's the progressive conference in the original days of the UCC. There was a lot of progressive voices coming out of the Missouri, side of things. And so I think, it's there and it's in the roots of who we are as a conference. And I think, walking you know, side by side doesn't just mean saying, you know, this is the direction we have to go and we're going to go in that direction and then we should all go in that direction. It means that together we're serving the people. And so if in one town we're serving the community by, you know, feeding others, then, you know, then that's what we do. And if in another community we are creating a safe space for LGBTQ youth, then that's what we're called to do, and that's what we do. And you know, and I think that's the beauty of who the United Church of Christ is. It's, you know, that we are united and we're in covenantal relationship with each other and with our national setting. But we also recognize that we are allowed to be unique and autonomous in our nature, and that is really a beautiful thing when we can, you know, we can each serve our communities in the way that we need to serve them and be authentic to who we are.
Let me say on behalf of the search committee that the job, I should say something about the job description, which we haven't said. Is Hannah still on?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Damien, the ACM position will be very busy, just honestly with some administrative necessary work of the conference. So he will be the conference liaison to all of the committees on ministry. I was going to say 3, but there's actually 4. So the one in Western, the one in Eastern, and the 2 in St. Louis. He also will be responsible for all search and call. So that is part of and you may not know, but the position is going to be located. Are you moving to Columbia or Jeff, or did we decide? Did you decide?
Well, I think we're leaning as Columbia. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but it was going to be and we advertised it that way, actually, that it would be located in mid-Missouri to allow that travel necessity that the position is going to have. So I just think we need to understand ourselves in the calling, you know, and what we expect of Damien. There's going to be some very, very high demands on his time administratively, at least to begin with. And the ability of a person, so since this person will do all search and call, to help to assist with that process with an openly O&A, very justice-oriented church, probably urban church somewhere, and to assist with that process in a very rural church that doesn't do Zoom, or perhaps where the members are mostly elderly. We took that very carefully into consideration and looked for a person that we thought could do that.
And this is Stephanie DeLong. I just pulled up the job description, and really, Damien's going to be very busy with search and call and a variety of search committees. And when we were interviewing people, we were looking for somebody who had that flexibility to go from the whole spectrum of our churches and to be able to relate to people. And Damien's also going to be driving a lot. And that was one of the things when we interviewed, you said you like to drive.
I do. I do.
So yes, and you like cars.
And I'm used to that kind of work too. You know, when I was doing, at one point I was in sales and marketing and I was a regional sales manager. I had an 11-state territory. So I actually have been through, you know, many of the parts of, you know, the Midwest and down into the southern part of the country. So I'm used to being on the road. I'm also somebody who communicates. I like to, you know, I try to make myself accessible to people via, you know, cell phones, you know, text messaging, Facebook Messenger, you know, Instagram, if you're using Instagram Messenger. I have Snapchat, I have TikTok, I've got all kinds of social media that I use, and I'm very intentional about those things. I'm trying to be as intentional about my use of social media and my awareness of it so that I can help teach others about it. And if I don't have the answers, you know, which I probably don't have a lot of them all the time, but, you know, I'm at least diving in. And I think that's really what was important to me as again, applying for the position was I wanted to be a resource for people. You know, somebody can call and say, well, what do I do if my members don't know how to do Zoom, and how do I work around that? Or is there other platforms, or is there other things we can do? So, you know, I think, Kathy, those are great questions, and hopefully, you know, people will reach out and they'll ask those questions, and I'll do my best, as I am only able to do, to take care of the needs of this conference, and that comes first.
I have no doubt about that whatsoever.
Laura, go ahead.
I'm Laura Mignerone. I serve a church in St. Clair, which means nothing to you, but it's a small, just outside of suburbia, rural church.
Okay.
And my question is, you talked about how ministry is changing. We're all very aware of that. The life of the church is changing, all of that. How do churches who are in the midst of that transition in the life of the church, and also in the midst of a transition between pastors having difficulty finding viable candidates, how do you, what are your thoughts about recruiting viable candidates for those churches who are struggling not just with the world changing, churches changing, but not having an in-house pastor right now to help lead them through that?
Yeah, Laura, that's a great question. I think that there, you know, is one of the things so I learned a couple of things from not only being a pastor and working in different, you know, different settings, but also from when I was in sales and marketing and when I was a regional sales rep. One of the things I learned is that I had to go into stores that I didn't sell product to, and I would take good designers and I would steal them, and I would drag them into one of my stores that sold my product, and I would, you know, get them on board and teach them to do that. And so, not quite in that same terminology of stealing, but I have a good outreach of colleagues, and I use, you know, a lot of those relationships that I have to try to help find pastors too. I have friends that will come to me and say, hey, do you know of anything? Or, hey, you're serving this church, can you tell me about it? Because I might be interested in applying. I have no issue going into another conference and stealing a really good pastor or two or three or four and dragging them down into Missouri and making them part of the Missouri Mid-South. And I think that's important, right? I mean, you know, as clergy, we're looking for churches. We want sustainability. We want, you know, to find that right place. And my big thing has always been this, I've always said this, and that is, it's really important for us to find the right seat on the bus for people. And I believe that strongly with clergy. We have to be, you know, we have to find the right seat on that bus for us as clergy. And so, you know, I think the other thing is to work really closely with clergy to make sure that, you know, you have a really good resource in me, so that, you know, you can say things like, you know, you can just call and I'm struggling with this today, or I'm having a hard time with that, I'm thinking about leaving, you know. Hopefully, you know, I can keep you in the Missouri Mid-South. You know, that's ideal. But, you know, again, you know, trying to be a good resource and trying to bring in other people who I know are good pastors and help them to find churches. And getting creative about it, right? Getting creative about how we serve. I mean, I served two churches at the same time, as I said, for 2 years, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was very healthy and sustainable work, and there were 2 part-time churches, and we had a really good time together, and we did some really great ministry in both settings. That was really great. So.
I'm Lisa Martin. I'm at St. John United Church of Christ in St. Charles, Missouri. So we're one of the larger churches in the conference.
Right.
And this is my husband, Jim Hilker, and he's at Faith UCC in Wentzville, which is why we're seated together without social distancing. My question for you is, I know that I sometimes feel like I'm pulled in 99 directions at any given time with my congregation. And as I look at conference work and look at where conference staff have to go and the things that they have to do, that seems to be multiplied exponentially. And so my question is, how do you see you balancing your sanity in this position? What do you do to ensure your Sabbath, and how do you refresh yourself and keep your spirit going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nice to meet you both, and glad to know that you're serving out there. I've been through St. Charles, so I do know where that is. Anyways, yeah, so you're absolutely right. That the conference ministry, is going to pull me in several different directions and keep me busy, probably 24/7. And certainly if I allow it to, just like if we as pastors allow ministry to take over our lives, it will do so. As I say to lots of pastors that are colleagues and friends of mine, I'll say, the church has will eat you up and spit you out and move on to the next pastor without any problem at all. So having balance is really important. Much like Jenny does, will put probably in the e-courier every week, telling you what my schedule is and Sabbath days. That will be one way to observe those kinds of things. But what you see in my background image is exactly my kind of therapy. I like to torque a wrench, and I know I talk about cars a lot, but I also see there's also some ministry piece to cars, but I won't talk about that tonight. But I like to get out and drive classic cars. I like to work on them. It's partly because it takes my mindset off of all of the ministry that I'm doing and allows me to focus on something more intentional, something completely different. The car is definitely, when I'm thinking about a carburetor and an adjustment, or if I'm thinking about changing out spark plug wires or changing an alternator, any of those things, immediately I stop thinking about anything else. The other part of my own self-care is my family. My family is really important to me. And so I intentionally spend time with them as much as I can. My daughter is 13, going on 14, well, going on 21. That's my inside joke. Anyways, she will sometimes say to me, Dad, it's a Wednesday afternoon at 2:00, and she'll say, hey, can we go to see a movie? And so I'll look and see if my schedule allows it, and I will try to make that time, because I believe that she's kind of reminding me that self-care is really important, and that I need to spend time with her. So I'm very aware and in tune with my own personal boundaries around how much time I have. And so I give a lot of myself to my job, but I also realize that that's really important. Does that kind of cover it with you, Lisa? Does that help?
Other questions? Any final thoughts or comments from anyone?
Could you maybe go around the screen? I'd like to just know those who haven't spoken, where they are, or what they're, are they serving churches? Are they members of churches? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Mike
so
Cruz in South County.
Oh, hi, Mike.
How about I'll go in the order of my screen, and I'll say just your first name, and you can say more about who you are and where you serve, if that's okay. So Kathy, you've spoken, but you're the first on my screen, so I'm going to call on you again.
Hi, Damien. I'm in Sedalia, which is about halfway between Jefferson City and Kansas City, a town of about 20,000. That's all you need to know for now.
Good, thank you.
All right, Don.
Hi, I'm Don Franzen Damien. Nice to meet you. And I'm the pastor at St. Paul's UCC in Defiance, Missouri, a small town. It actually has 125 residents. So it's not a very big place. However, we get things done out there sometimes. So welcome.
Great, great, wonderful.
Hannah?
Yeah, I'm Hannah Rice. I am on staff and a member of First Congregational Church in Clayton. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Hannah.
The Brinkhorsts.
She's got a.
You're still muted. There you go.
All right, so Bill Brinkhorst just exited, and I'm Joy Dressel, but we're married, and we are members at St. Lucas in the St. Louis Association, and we're just involved people. I chair the Conference Heritage Committee, and Bill is on the Camp Moval covenanted ministry. I guess Heritage is a covenanted ministry too now.
Okay.
So anyway, and Bill is a lay delegate for St. Lucas, and I was a lay delegate, but I stepped down from that so I could be on the church council.
Great.
Thank you. Lisa and Jim.
I do speak.
We thought you were
I'm Jim Hilker, married to this lady. I serve in Wentzville, Crossroads of America.
Indeed.
I'm also on the Eastern Association Council.
Great.
I already spoke, Lisa Martin at St. John and St. Charles. We will probably be working together some because we're hiring a new associate pastor who's leaving in 2 weeks. So
exciting.
That will be some work in the future.
Sure. Great.
Laura.
Oh, that's me again. Hi, Laura. St. Clair is about an hour outside of St. Louis due west. So, ta-da! Bye.
Great.
Cindy.
Cindy Bum, Vice President of Spiritual Care at Emmaus Homes and member of Good Shepherd UCC in St. Charles. But I live in St. Louis.
All right. Thank you. Meredith.
Yeah, I'm Meredith Jackson. I serve at Isaiah 58 Ministries in St. Louis, and I'm a member of Grace UCC in South City.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, everyone just rearranged on my computer. Stephanie, I think, was next.
Did you say Stephanie?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, it's Stephanie DeLong, St. Peter's United Church of Christ, Owensville, Missouri. I was on the search committee, and Owensville is, how do we say this? South of Herman, north of Cuba, west of Union, east of Jeff City. So my son Eddie, he's a General Synod delegate. He was here for a little bit, but he's walked out of the room.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Mike? I know you said it, but you can say it again.
Mike Cruzen, South County. St. Philip's Church is a suburban church.
Great.
Thank you. Let's see. The one that says local church something, is that Joyce?
Mm-hmm.
Joyce, you around? Oh. Okay. And then I'm not sure who's on the phone. 636-390-3425.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Rhonda Stocklossner, and my husband is on a Zoom meeting on the laptop with Board of Building and Grounds Board at St. Peter's UCC in Washington, Missouri. So I had to call in and listening intently and enjoying the conversation so far. I serve on the Committee on Ministry at this time in the Eastern Association. So I'm going to be coming in on Thursday as well.
Oh, great.
Thank you. And I forgot that people might not know who I am. So I am Andrea Alsemeyer. I am a chaplain at Emmaus Homes. I get to work with Cindy. She's awesome. And what's that?
You're awesome too.
And I am the current vice moderator of the Missouri Mid-South Conference until the last week in April. And then if enough people write in a different name, I don't know what will happen, but at this point, I'm probably going to be the moderator come the last week in April. I keep making that joke. It never works. So, Damien, thank you for joining us in this way.
Thank you.
We are all learning as we go, and I think we're learning that some people can be involved in this type of a meeting that maybe were not able to be involved when we focused more on ways we could gather. And so I'm appreciative that we are all learning and growing and willing to meet in new ways. So thank you all for being here this evening, for your wonderfully wise and deep questions.
Yes, thank you.
And for sharing your thoughts and your hopes and dreams with us. So, any last comments, thoughts? Sorry, go ahead, Damien.
No, I'm just going to say thank you to everyone who did come and ask great questions. I wanted to say thank you too for this time, and I love the opportunity to do this. This is a first for me to hear about. I don't think I've never heard a conference doing this, which obviously, given the situation, this is a great idea. But even if it weren't in house arrest right now, this is still a great way to do a little get to know each other. So
yes, thank you. So we'll be back 6 o'clock Thursday and 6 o'clock next week, Tuesday.
Monday.
Monday?
I have it in
I
my
don't want to tell people the wrong day. I should be looking at my calendar. I have it right here.
Monday.
Next week, Monday. Yes, thank you. And so join us again. We'll have more wonderful conversation. So thank you all for being here. Enjoy your evening. Stay safe and kind.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.